My name is Marcus, and I'm 32 years old. For most of my life, I've been the reliable one in my family. You know the type. The kid who never caused trouble, who stayed quiet during family fights, who cleaned up after everyone without being asked. The one who didn't need much. That's exactly how my parents liked it. They never said it out loud, but by my 20s, the pattern was obvious. My job wasn't to be cared for. It was to take care of everyone else, especially my younger brother, Tyler. Tyler is 29 now, and growing up, he was everything I wasn't. Loud, reckless, charming in that way that made adults excuse his bad behavior as just a phase. He barely scraped through high school, partied his way through community college, and somehow always landed on his feet. Meanwhile, I worked part-time jobs while studying engineering, skipped spring break trips to save money, and spent weekends fixing things around the house so mom and dad wouldn't have to hire help. I thought I was earning their respect, maybe even their pride. But what I really was, I now realize, was convenient. The first sign that things weren't equal came right after college. Tyler had dropped out of business school for the second time and was working some temporary warehouse job. I had just landed my first real engineering position and was absolutely thrilled about it. I remember coming home that weekend with champagne and my first real paycheck, thinking maybe this time Dad would say he was proud of me. He barely glanced up from the TV. Mom gave me a quick hug, then immediately asked if I could cover Tyler's car insurance that month because he was between jobs again. Of course I did it. That's what I'd always done. A few years later, I bought a small townhouse about an hour outside the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Tyler was still living at home, cycling through jobs and girlfriends, none lasting more than a few months. I started setting boundaries, saying no when they asked me to cover his credit card debt, refusing when Mom hinted I should let him move in with me, just until he gets back on his feet. That's when things started to change. They didn't argue with me directly. No yelling or guilt trips, just silence. Cold, heavy silence. Phone calls went unanswered. Text messages were read but never replied to. I'd show up for holidays and feel like a stranger in my own family. Tyler loved it. He'd make jokes about how I was the corporate robot while he was the free spirit chasing his dreams. And my parents would laugh along like he was some misunderstood genius instead of a 30-year-old man-child. I kept my distance and built my own life until last year when my grandfather passed away. Grandpa Joe was the only one in the family who ever really saw me for who I was. He was quiet but thoughtful, always asking about my work projects, sending me books about leadership and innovation, telling me to aim higher. I spent more time with him than anyone else in the family. We bonded over Chess' old science fiction novels and our shared love of restoring vintage watches. So when I got the call from the family lawyer, I naively assumed I'd at least be part of the conversation about his estate. I wasn't. Turns out Grandpa Joe had left everything, his house, his antique collection, even his classic car, to my parents, trusting them to distribute it fairly. And that they had decided to give it all to Tyler. Their reason: he'll have a family someday, he'll need the stability. I sat there in stunned silence as they told me this, like it was the most logical thing in the world. Like it made perfect sense that I, the one who had been there for Grandpa, who had helped him when his health was declining, who had driven him to doctor appointments, got nothing. Not even the chess set we played on every Sunday. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just nodded, said, "Thanks for letting me know," and left. That was the moment everything changed inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just clarity. Like someone had wiped fog off a mirror and shown me what had been staring me in the face for years. But it didn't stop there. 6 months later, I started getting texts from Mom. First, small requests. Could I help with their internet bill because Dad was between contracts, then the electric bill, then the property taxes on Grandpa's house, the same house they'd gifted to Tyler, who had moved in with his new girlfriend and was planning to convert the garage into a music studio. "You know how tough things are right now," Mom texted. "You're doing so well, you should help." At first I ignored the messages. Then I sent polite no responses. Then I stopped responding altogether. That's when the guilt trips began. My aunt called to ask why I was punishing my parents. Tyler left me a voicemail saying I'd changed and that success had made me arrogant. Then last week, I got the text. The one that made me sit down, read it 3 times, and take a very long, very deep breath. It was from Mom. Simple, cold, no greeting. "Electric bill is overdue, you need to handle it." That was it. No, please. No, can you? Just an expectation like paying their bills was a job I'd forgotten to show up for. I stared at that message for a long time. The anger didn't come immediately. It was a slow burn building up from years of being taken for granted, finally reaching its breaking point. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to be clear-headed, not impulsive. For the first time in my life, I wanted them to understand exactly who I was and who I wasn't going to be anymore. So I started writing a response, not just to the text, but to everything. The years of being the backup plan, the expectation that I would give, without question, while Tyler was given everything without earning it. I thought about what I'd say, how I'd say it, and how this time I wasn't going to walk away quietly. The morning after that text, I sat at my kitchen table, still staring at it like it might disappear. Electric bill is overdue. You need to handle it. I read it over and over, not even phrased as a question, just a command like I was an employee whose paycheck they'd forgotten to sign. I didn't reply. Instead, I started thinking about all the quiet moments that had led to this point. How I'd been conditioned to accept this treatment without protest. How every time I tried to set a boundary, I was met with subtle punishment, withdrawn affection, sudden silence, comments from relatives that I thought I was too good now. I'd convinced myself for years that keeping the peace was noble, that maybe if I just gave a little more, tried a little harder, they'd treat me like a son instead of a utility. But I was done pretending. The next few weeks only confirmed I was making the right choice. It started with a Facebook post. Tyler had tagged our parents in a photo outside Grandpa's old house. The caption read, "New chapter turning this place into our dream home for me and my future family. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for believing in me." The comments were full of congratulations and heart emojis, people praising my parents for being so generous and supportive. And not one mention of the fact that I had spent countless hours working on that house before Grandpa passed, fixing the roof, retailing the bathroom, repainting the entire downstairs after Grandpa fell and couldn't manage it himself. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just stared at the screen, feeling something twist in my chest as I watched someone else take credit for the life I'd helped build. Then came the phone call. I hadn't talked to Dad in months, but one evening he called out of the blue. No small talk, no "how have you been?" Just a heavy sigh and then, "Your mother's stressed about all this, Marcus." I waited for him to continue, confused. "All what stress?" He scoffed like I was being difficult. "The bills, the house maintenance, and Tyler's talking about starting a family soon. We thought you'd be more involved." I almost dropped the phone. "Involved, Dad? I'm not even invited to family dinners anymore?" Long silence. Then he said something that broke something inside me. "We didn't think you'd mind, Marcus. You don't need what Tyler needs. He's going to have kids, a wife. You're, independent." That word, independent. It used to feel like a compliment. Now it felt like a polite way of calling me disposable. I didn't argue. I just said, "I have to go," and hung up. The next week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name in block letters. Inside was a handwritten list of expenses in Mom's familiar cursive internet, gas, electric, property tax. At the bottom, your share $740. Please send by the 15th. No note, no explanation. Just a bill. My hands shook as I folded the paper. I could feel the old instinct kicking in. The voice telling me to keep the peace, just pay it, don't make waves. But another voice was speaking too, asking, "Why are you financing their favoritism?" I didn't pay the bill. Instead, I called my friend Jordan, who'd gone into estate law, and asked a question I never thought I'd voice. If someone gives away an inheritance without proper documentation, is there anything that can be done? He paused. "You're talking about your grandfather's estate." "Maybe." "Well," he said slowly, "if it was informal and there's no paper trail, it's difficult. But if they misrepresented the inheritance or ignored documented wishes, you might have options." "Why?" I didn't answer directly, just thanked him and hung up. The next family event I was invited to was Tyler's engagement party. I hadn't seen him or my parents since that phone call, and I was surprised they even included me. The invitation came with gold foil lettering and a photo of Tyler and his fiancée posed on Grandpa's porch, the same porch I'd painted the summer after college while Tyler was on a cruise paid for with Mom's emergency savings. I wasn't planning to go, but then I thought about that chess set, the one Grandpa had promised me when I was 16 after I finally beat him. "You've earned it," he'd said, smiling. "Someday this will be yours." I never saw it again after he died. I checked the invitation one more time. No personal note from Tyler, just printed text. "Join us in celebrating love and family." Family, right. I marked the date. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but something had shifted. I was no longer trying to be included. I was planning my exit, and I wanted them to remember it. The day of Tyler's engagement party felt heavy before I even got out of bed. I hadn't RSVP'd, hadn't called, hadn't given any indication I was coming. But I went anyway, not to celebrate, not to make peace, but because I needed to see with my own eyes just how far this family dysfunction had gone. Grandpa's house looked completely different. The clean, weathered white siding was now some trendy dark gray. His old rose garden was gone, replaced with a sterile rock landscape. The porch where we used to sit quietly watching the sunset had been expanded into a wide deck with string lights and expensive outdoor furniture. And right there, hanging beside the front door, was a custom wooden sign, Future Home of the Mitchell Family. Tyler's last name, not ours. I walked through the front door into a wave of laughter chatter and clinking glasses. The air smelled of catered food and designer candles. No trace of the quiet, comfortable home that had once been filled with chess games and gentle conversations. No one greeted me at first. I stood by the door for a full minute before my aunt spotted me and came over with a forced smile. "Marcus, so glad you made it." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Mom was near the fireplace chatting with women I didn't recognize. She glanced at me just long enough to make eye contact, then looked away as if I were a stranger who'd wandered in by mistake. Dad eventually walked over and shook my hand like we were business acquaintances. "You look good," he said. "Thanks." He gave a quick nod and excused himself to check on the catering. Tyler made his grand entrance from upstairs with his fiancée. I think her name was Jessica. The room practically erupted in applause. He soaked it up like a politician at a rally, waving and giving finger guns to guests. When he finally saw me, his smile flickered slightly. Then he walked over with that casual swagger I'd known since we were kids. "Marcus, wow, wasn't sure you'd show up. Got the invitation." "Yeah, well, no hard feelings about the house situation, right? Mom and Dad did what they thought was best." He shrugged like it was out of his hands, like I should thank him for even mentioning it. "Hey, at least you don't have to worry about repairs and maintenance, right? You're the free agent, no strings attached." I didn't respond. I just looked past him toward a display table near the kitchen, and that's when I saw something that stopped me cold. Grandpa's chess set, polished under glass, displayed like a museum piece. A small engraved plaque read, "From our family legacy, now part of our new beginning." I felt something crack inside my chest. That set wasn't just sentimental, it was symbolic. It was mine. Maybe not legally, but morally, spiritually. Grandpa had promised it to me. I remembered every piece, every smooth wooden knight, the worn edges of the pawns from decades of games. That set had seen me through my teenage years, through conversations about life and ambition and self-worth. I'd never asked Grandpa for anything else because I believed that set represented something deeper, that it meant I mattered to him. Now it was just a prop in Tyler's success story. I turned away before anyone could see the anger building behind my eyes and went out to the backyard to clear my head. But that was a mistake too. The backyard had been transformed into a full event space. White tents, fairy lights, an open bar, even a hired photographer. And that's when I heard it. "We're thinking of asking Marcus to co-sign the new mortgage," Jessica was saying, her voice quiet, but not quiet enough. "Just until Tyler's credit improves. Your mom said he'll do it. She said he always helps when family asks." I froze behind a tent pole listening. "Marcus won't say no." Tyler's voice drifted over from the other side. "He acts cold sometimes, but deep down he still wants their approval. He'll give in." They all laughed. That was it. The betrayal wasn't just the stolen inheritance or the lies. It was this plan to chain me financially to a house I didn't own, didn't live in, wasn't even welcome in. This assumption that I was so desperate for scraps of affection that I'd sabotage my own future just to stay in their orbit. I walked back inside and headed straight for the chess set display. I stared at it one more time. The queen was in the wrong position. They didn't even know how to set it up properly. I looked around at the house, at the people laughing and congratulating each other on building a future with my legacy, my work, my grandfather's love. And I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Power. Not anger, not bitterness, just quiet, clear resolve. This wasn't my family anymore, and I wasn't their safety net. What I did next ensured they'd never forget it. I left the party without saying goodbye. No dramatic scene, no accusations, no table flipping like I used to fantasize about when I was younger and angrier. I just slipped out the side door and walked to my car. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own breathing too clearly. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, staring at the dashboard, hands motionless in my lap. That chess set, that conversation about the mortgage, that look on Mom's face when she saw me and just turned away. I never felt more disposable, like I was a credit line with a pulse valued only for what I could provide, not for who I was. That night, I didn't go home. I just drove through the city, past late-night gas stations and empty parking lots and 24-hour diners still glowing with neon signs. My mind wasn't racing with rage, but with questions. How did I let it get this far? How did I become the one left out of my own family's future? When did I stop mattering? I ended up at an all-night diner on the edge of town, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and the smell of burnt coffee soaked into the walls. I ordered pancakes I wasn't hungry for and sat at the counter while the waitress kept refilling my cup like she knew I needed time to think. That's where the breakdown happened. Not a loud one, no sobbing or shouting, just me hunched over syrup-soaked pancakes, quietly letting tears fall into my coffee while an old 80s song played on the jukebox. It was grief. Grief for the family I thought I had, for the version of myself I'd sacrificed piece by piece to stay in their good graces for all the time I'd never get back. I didn't go to work the next day. Told my boss I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie. I didn't shower or shave, just sat in my living room looking through the old photo albums I dug out of storage. Pictures of Tyler and me as kids, birthday parties, camping trips. The look on my face back then, so hopeful, so eager to please. I wanted to reach through those photos and tell that kid, they don't love you the way you deserve. Stop trying so hard. That week, the text started again. Marcus, can you call the bank about Mom's account? The water bill bounced. Need you to handle it. We're adding Tyler's name to Grandpa's property officially. Just a formality. We'll need your signature. You're being cruel, Marcus. We're family. Stop punishing us because life gave Tyler different needs. Different needs. I couldn't even bring myself to reply. Instead, I deleted the entire conversation thread. Blocked Mom's number, then Dad's, then Tyler's. I even blocked my aunt who'd been sending passive-aggressive messages about honoring your parents and family forgiveness. I spent the next few days in complete silence. No calls, no texts, no demands. It was like walking through a forest after a storm. Broken branches everywhere, debris underfoot, but strangely peaceful. I didn't feel victorious, though. I felt hollow. Cutting them off was like pulling out a deeply embedded splinter. It hurt going in, hurt more coming out, but I knew it had to happen if I ever wanted to heal properly. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. Page after page of unfiltered thoughts, every memory that now made sense in hindsight. The times I fixed the fence while Tyler played video games. The $2,000 I loaned Dad for house repairs that somehow paid for Tyler's motorcycle. The Thanksgiving I brought a girlfriend, and no one remembered her name by dessert. I poured it all out, and in the quiet that followed, something new emerged: resolve. Not vengeance, but clarity. Direction. I called my accountant and asked him to audit anything my name was attached to. Family properties, joint accounts, old co-signed loans. I wanted everything documented. Then I scheduled an appointment with a financial advisor to explore options for protecting my assets and credit. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was necessary. Small, quiet steps toward independence. I started taking morning walks again, something I'd loved before life got too complicated. Cleaned out old clothes, rearranged my living space, threw away things that no longer brought me joy. It felt symbolic. I was creating space for peace, for the person I might have been if I hadn't spent decades playing someone else's supporting character. Then one morning, I found an email that changed everything. It was from a law firm, subject line, retransfer of property and financial responsibility. Inside was a PDF document listing me as a co-responsible party for Grandpa's house. Not a co-owner, a financially liable party. It had been filed 3 months ago. No one had told me. No one had asked permission. The bank now considered me equally responsible for any debts attached to the property: repairs, taxes, mortgage, refinancing fees. They had signed me into their future without my consent, without my knowledge. I stared at that document for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, Grandpa Joe's old lawyer, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison. I still had his business card tucked inside a watch Grandpa had given me for graduation, a watch Tyler had once mocked as cheap-looking. Mr. Harrison answered after 2 rings. "This is Marcus," I said. "Marcus Chen. I was Joseph Chen's grandson." Pause, then a warm, familiar voice. I remember you, son. Your grandfather was very proud of you. How can I help? I took a deep breath and told him everything. Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison didn't interrupt once. I explained about the house, the inheritance, the mounting bills, and how my family had somehow signed my name to financial documents without my knowledge. I even mentioned the chess set, though I tried to pretend it wasn't the part that still kept me awake at night. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, Marcus, I don't usually speak critically of former clients, but your grandfather would be appalled by how they've treated you. He trusted them to handle things honorably. If they forged your signature or misrepresented your financial obligations, you may have more options than you realize. That was the first moment in weeks where I felt the tide beginning to turn. He offered to meet in person and review everything I had: bank statements, text messages, emails, that PDF from the law firm. I spent hours digging through years of digital records, pulling out every receipt, every payment app transfer for Tyler's debts, every message where Mom thanked me for helping out with bills. I now realized were part of a larger pattern. It was like assembling a puzzle I never knew I'd been building. Mr. Harrison worked quickly. He helped me draft a legal notice demanding removal of my name from the property's financial obligations, citing lack of consent and fraudulent representation. He also discovered they had tried to add me as a mortgage co-signer, but the application was declined because they couldn't produce a signed document from me. I wasn't just cutting them off anymore. I was protecting myself legally. Meanwhile, something else started happening. With all the energy I used to pour into family drama, I suddenly had time and mental space to focus on things that actually mattered. I showed up to work sharper, more focused. My supervisor noticed and offered me a project leadership position for a major infrastructure redesign downtown, something I never would have taken on if I'd still been managing crises at home. I accepted. Then I did something I'd never done before: I booked a real vacation. 2 weeks in Portugal traveling alone. It wasn't just to get away, it was a declaration that my time, my peace, my life belonged to me again. On that trip, something fundamental shifted inside me. I journaled every day, walked through Lisbon with no agenda, sat in cafes without checking my phone. There were no emergencies to fix, no family drama pulling me back home, just me, a city I didn't know, and the sound of my own thoughts, finally getting space to breathe. And I started hearing myself clearly for the first time in years. I wasn't broken, I wasn't selfish, I wasn't the problem, I was free. When I returned home, there was a certified letter waiting. From my parents' attorney. They were surprised by my legal notice. They felt betrayed. They claimed they had only tried to give Tyler a chance at stability, assuming I would understand given how successful I was. But the final paragraph was revealing. They asked me to reconsider, to undo the paperwork, to not make this situation public. The implication was clear. They were worried I might tell people what they'd done, that their carefully maintained image of being a generous, close-knit family might finally crack. That's when I knew I had the upper hand. For the first time in my life, they needed me, and I didn't need them at all. I wrote back a single sentence: all future communication should go through my attorney. A week later, Mr. Harrison called with good news. My name had been formally removed from all legal responsibility regarding the property. They had backed down quietly but completely. It felt like a final lock clicking open on a cage I hadn't realized I'd been trapped inside. 2 months after that, I received an unexpected invitation, not from my family, but from a local nonprofit I'd donated to years earlier. They wanted me to speak on a panel about financial boundaries and recovering from toxic family dynamics. Apparently, I'd included a personal note with my donation back then, and someone had saved it. I almost declined, but something told me to go. Standing on that stage, I told a room full of strangers about a chess set, a forged document, and the long journey of learning to stop begging people to treat me with basic dignity. I watched faces nod in recognition, eyes widen with understanding, shoulders relax as they saw parts of themselves in my story. Afterward, a woman in her 40s approached me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was the only one." I wasn't just healing anymore. I was helping others heal too. Walking home that night under a clear sky, free of clouds and expectations, I realized something important: I hadn't lost a family. I had outgrown one. And this was just the beginning. About a month after the nonprofit speaking event, I received an email from someone unexpected: Mr. Peterson, a historian and antique appraiser who used to visit Grandpa Joe. He'd sit in the sunroom drinking coffee, discussing the history of old pocket watches, vintage chess sets, and rare books. I hadn't seen him since I was a teenager, but his email was warm and intriguing. Marcus, I happened to attend your panel discussion last month. You've become a man your grandfather would be incredibly proud of. I wanted to reach out because something has come to my attention regarding your grandfather's belongings. Would you be willing to meet? That last sentence made my pulse quicken. We arranged to meet at a quiet downtown cafe. Mr. Peterson was older now, moving more slowly, but his eyes were sharp and his memory sharper. Your grandfather had a will, he said without preamble. I felt my stomach drop. I thought he left everything to my parents to distribute. He shook his head. He had a formal will when he wrote about 8 months before he passed. I helped him draft it. Most of his personal belongings were designated specifically for you, including that chess set you mentioned in your speech. My breath caught. But the will was never filed. My parents said there wasn't one. He nodded gravely. I was surprised when I heard they claimed no documentation existed. I assumed plans had changed, or perhaps your grandfather never finalized everything. But then I found this. He pulled a sealed envelope from his jacket pocket, worn but intact. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Grandpa's flowing script, to be opened by Marcus Chen upon my death. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Marcus, if you're reading this, then something went wrong and this letter never reached you as intended. I want you to know you were always the one I believed in, the one who showed up, the one who earned every bit of my respect. I asked your parents to distribute things fairly, trusting they'd honor my wishes. But just in case they didn't, I wanted this in writing. The chess set is yours. So are my watch collection, my military medals, and the contents of safety deposit box number 442 at First National Bank. Everything in that box belongs to you by right, not charity. I hope you never need this as proof, but if you do, don't be afraid to fight for what's already yours. Love, Grandpa Joe. I read it 3 times before looking up. Do you know what's in the box? Mr. Peterson smiled slightly. Only your grandfather knew for sure, but I can tell you this, he once said, that legacy isn't just about money or objects. It's about making sure the right people carry the torch forward. That afternoon, I went to First National Bank. After some paperwork and verification, a bank manager led me into a secure back room. I signed forms, showed my ID, and was handed a small key. Box 442 was heavier than expected. Inside, I found a certified copy of the original will signed and notarized an insurance appraisal for the chess set and vintage watches totaling over $80,000, a detailed inventory of Grandpa's military medals and antique tools, each with handwritten notes about their history, and tucked beneath everything else, a USB drive. I took it all home and plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained several folders of scanned documents, receipts, letters, property transfers, and one folder labeled Tyler Situation. Inside were screenshots of text conversations between my parents discussing keeping Marcus out of the loop, a copy of what appeared to be a forged signature on property documents, and even an audio recording of Grandpa's voice saying clearly, "If this message is being heard by anyone except Marcus, then you've taken what was never yours to take, and I hope he finds this before the damage becomes irreversible." I sat in stunned silence. Everything I'd suspected was documented, verified, proven. This wasn't just evidence of their betrayal. This was war, the kind of power that could flip the entire narrative legally and socially. I had the original will, the audio recordings, the financial appraisals, even hard evidence of signature forgery. I made copies of everything, saved files to encrypted cloud storage, and forwarded key documents to Mr. Harrison. "This changes everything," he said when I called him. "You don't just have a case, you have an airtight case." But I wasn't in a hurry because now for the first time I was playing chess with the full board in front of me. They thought I was out of moves, but I still had my queen and the moment to strike was coming. I just had to decide how public I wanted their downfall to be. I waited exactly 11 days. Not because I was uncertain, not because I had doubts. I waited because timing, like in chess, is everything. And if my family had taught me anything, it's that people who rely on your silence get nervous when it stretches just long enough. They start wondering if you're building something, and I was. On the 12th day, I called Mr. Harrison. "I'm ready." He didn't need to ask what I meant. We'd spent the previous week preparing every legal thread we'd need. The original will had been submitted to probate court as a previously undisclosed document. Harrison filed a formal petition backed by the will, Grandpa's notarized letter, and the audio recording. That alone would have shaken them. But that wasn't the real move. That was just setting up the board. The real move was what I sent to the rest of the family the next day, certified letters to my parents Tyler and even my aunt. Inside each envelope was a formal letter, polite but firm. As you are now aware, a certified copy of Joseph Chen's original will has been located and filed with probate court. In accordance with his documented wishes, several personal assets currently in your possession, including the vintage chess set, antique watches, and military memorabilia, have been legally designated to me. Furthermore, due to your unauthorized attempt to assign financial responsibility to me without consent, as well as documented evidence of forged signatures and estate misrepresentation, I have initiated a formal fraud claim currently under legal review. I am offering a resolution: return all assets named in the original, will cease all financial contact with me, and acknowledge the updated probate documentation in writing within 7 business days. If these conditions are met, I will refrain from pursuing criminal charges and public disclosure of the recorded evidence in my possession. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal escalation and public release of all documented materials. Sincerely, Marcus Chen. I didn't include threats because I didn't need to. The implications were clear enough. The following days were eerily quiet. Then, on day story 2, my alarm went off at 6:12 a.m. in the one-bedroom apartment I could almost afford. Noah, my kid, was standing on the couch. He made a bed call. Even when the world didn't smile, his drowsy face and silky brown locks never failed to make me grin. He was 6 years old. With a cold protein bar in hand, I hurried out after kissing his forehead and said, "I'll bring donuts tonight." Although they weren't glamorous, double shifts at the diner kept the lights on. From morning to closing, I cleaned tables. After serving coffee to customers who seldom gave me eye contact, I hurried across town to a second job at a gas station where the boss Tom, believed that making advances on unmarried mothers was a required part of the training. Because every dime counted, I remained nevertheless. For Noah, every tip meant a book bag. He didn't have to stand for every hour he did. My parents were aware of all of this. They were aware of my diligence. They were aware that I didn't go out shop for clothing or take breaks. They didn't realize or care, though, how hurtful it was when they treated my sister Jasmine like queen and praised her. As the maid, I was fortunate to be present. Please leave a comment letting us know where you are seeing this video and subscribe to our channel. In her whole life, Jasmine had never worked. When a luxurious vacation was offered, her travel anxiety and resting headache conveniently vanished. Like she was posting grocery store pictures, she shared spa selfies from Dubai and Madrid. Every post, every phony company she purported to start, every falsehood wrapped in a wreath of hashtags and filters was praised by my parents. Take a look at your sister. Living the life you could have had if you weren't so dramatic, my mother would remark. When I told them that I couldn't afford childcare, they dubbed me dramatic. When they offered the moldy, unprivate basement, dramatic refused to return to their home. It was dramatic that I didn't donate my funds to support Jasmine's artistic endeavors as if I were a trust fund contributor. My parking spot was unoccupied when I got home one Tuesday after working 36 hours in 3 days. My heart fell. I hurried inside, reported the car stolen, and contacted the police. It wasn't they claimed. They claimed that the sale was lawful, that the title had been transferred by someone bearing my name and my signature. I froze. I gave my parents a call. My father said, "Oh, that. Jasmine required our assistance in planning her vacation to Spain. Lately, she has been under stress." I gasped. "My automobile was sold by you. You seldom used it. In any case, you're always walking." In the background, my mother added her voice. "We even let you retain the flat, so you should be thankful. To be honest, you ought to express gratitude." Then my mother texted me. Not a single emoji. "Don't apologize. Thank us for allowing you to walk." I spent 5 whole minutes looking at the message. I was meant to be thankful for the opportunity to walk 12 blocks home in the rain, even though my legs were still tired from standing all day. Noah was sleeping, so I had to keep quiet even though I wanted to scream. I had to remain still. But when I glanced out at the vacant parking spot again that night, I saw nothing but opportunity because something had broken inside of me. They assumed I would plead. They lighted the match without realizing it. I didn't text them back. I had too many words and none of them would have landed the way I wanted them to, not because I was lacking in them. Rather, I inhaled deeply and gazed at Noah, who was soundly dozing on the couch. He was worthy of more than a mother in decline. I then went to my drawer and took out my small notepad, which was marked "Someday," which was the only thing that still made sense to me. It was devoid of strategies for retaliation. Numbers, computations, and job applications were all over it. I was never able to complete the skills I wanted to master. Community-based initiatives. Childcare notes. Options. Deadlines for scholarships? I was going to choose one and go with it after writing every conceivable path in hell. The next morning, I made a brief initial call to the nearby trade school. They offered a weekend appliance repair certification course. Flexible hours for 3 months. High demand in the region. I registered. I too went to work earlier at the same time. Stayed later. I began babysitting during the night shift and walking dogs during my breaks. I considered selling my blood, but I did everything else instead. My parents never realized that I had previously lived for years without them, even while Jasmine was dependent on them. All I had to do now was level up in silence. I had a knock on my door 3 weeks later. My landlord was the one. "Is your rent overdue?" "Flatly," he said. "All I need is another 3 days." "No," he interrupted me. "You're doing okay. It was previously paid for by someone." I blinked. "What?" He gave the receipt to me. Paid in full. 3 months in advance. I looked up Cole Henderson's name. It had been 6 years since I had heard that name. I had dated Cole in high school. When I became pregnant and had no support, I ended things with that person. He was no longer there. Since then, we hadn't talked. Not even Noah had heard about Noah's father from me. I dialed the number shown on the invoice. Trembling hands. A guy replied, "Leah Cole." A protracted hush ensued. Then he let out a breath. Regarding Noah, he remarked, "I had no idea. I didn't know." "However, your mother. She labeled you a leech in the comments section of her article regarding Jasmine's trip. When I learned what they had done to you, I became intrigued and inquired around. When my knees gave out, I sat down on the ground." He went on, "I'm not asking for anything. Let me help if you need it, for him." I had nothing to say. Instead, I sobbed. And it wasn't the hopeless sort for the first time in years, with Cole's silent assistance. I completed the program more quickly. I secured a part-time apprenticeship with a nearby HVAC firm in less than 2 months. My degree didn't matter to them. The fact that I arrived early, stayed late, and could support myself was important to them. In 2 weeks, I earned more money there than I did at the diner in 2 months. I bought a used automobile in my name that was more secure than Fort Knox, paid off my debt, got Noah a decent bed, and relocated us into a better home with a backyard. I began working as a freelancer, repairing dryers and air conditioners. And I kept it a secret. Not until Jasmine shared a picture of herself in a bikini from Spain along with a message. "Play more, work harder, and the girls below will appear." "I'm proud of our princess and my mom," my dad said. She captioned a photo she shared of her toes in a hot tub. "There are some who stroll. Others are given first-class flights by appreciative daughters." I didn't ignore it, even though I could have. "Not now." I sent them a letter. Not very fancy. No threats, no lawyer's letters, just a single picture of Noah with a letter, a small repairman's outfit, a wrench, and a smile next to our new automobile. First class is not necessary for him. He is constructing a runway of his own. I anticipated what would happen. Calls, anger, and guilt tripping. I wasn't scared, though, because it would make them crawl, and I had one last thing to show them. Waves of voicemails arrived. Mom came first. "Do you find that small photo start adorable, Leah? Nobody's impressed. Without us, you are still nothing." Then father. "We're glad you and your brat weren't thrown out years ago. Kids who aren't grateful don't get far." And lastly, a drunken group call with Jasmine giggling in the background. "Have you purchased a costume for him when he develops a jet engine? Let me know. Super mom." I didn't answer. There was already something better going on, so I didn't have to. I was recently hired to renovate all of the apartments in their building by the new landlord, a young couple I had met through one of my appliance repair jobs. My work ethic got me the job, but the woman squinted when she learned my last name. "You mean that Steve and Marlene are your parents?" I said. She said. I paused. She muttered, "They're troublesome tenants who constantly ask for rent extensions and are behind on repairs." Incredibly entitled. I remained silent and continued to fix their dishwasher heater and broken air conditioner until one day, a woman interrupted me in the middle of a repair and said in a whisper, "You know they badmouthed you at our last tenant meeting, called you a gold-digging single mom who never amounted to anything." I smiled and explained my plan to her at that point. My parents had no idea that I was responsible for half of the building's repairs, but I had gained the new landlord's trust and was now able to view their apartments, work logs, complaints, and, most importantly, the pictures showing exactly what they had been ignoring. Rot mold and unapproved building. I packaged everything under the heading Unit 3B Risk Report and delivered it with composure and professionalism. A formal 30-day notice for non-compliance and tenant hostility was abruptly given to them. After a week, they came yelling at my door. My mother hissed, "You did this. You believe that because you fixed a few pipes, you are superior to us." "No," I replied, "because I constructed my own floor while you were too preoccupied with admiring your daughter's passport stamps, I'm better." Dad moved forward. "You were raised by us." "No, I made the correction. Jasmine was raised by you. I was used by you." Mom folded her arms. "It's over. However it was for them. For what reason, they were unaware that I had purchased the apartment next door." Jasmine rolled her bags and sobbed into her broken phone as I escorted them out on the 29th day. I said, "Be thankful I let you walk," as I stood in the hallway holding the new keys. They went cold. Mom blinked. "What?" Slowly, I turned the keys in my hand. "I should be thankful that you allowed me to walk," you said. "I said when you sold my car. It's funny how life goes." The voice of Jasmine broke. "What are we meant to do? I'm not sure." "Spain," I said. The elevator made a noise. My parents, who had once ruled my life with pride and smugness, slid the door open and entered with their heads lowered and the air heavy with silence. I remained motionless until the doors shut. Noah was waiting with a drawing in his hand when I made my way back to my new house. It was a crayon drawing of me holding his hand in front of our apartment. He had written to my mother and me. Together we strolled. Don't beg anymore. Don't call anymore. We were now racing down a road that they would never be able to catch up to. Please leave a comment letting us know where you are seeing this video and subscribe to our channel.